Okay, Miss Law, we are here to discuss the lesson that I observed where you were teaching Phonics 10D, which is decoding and encoding words with consonant digraphs and trigraphs, and your focus, because of open court, was on SH, CH, TH, and TCH was our trigraph that week. And also the standard you taught was standard 10F, where you were decoding and encoding words with the vowel R combinations, but because of open court, your focus was on AR. So from that lesson, can you tell me what is working in your class, what strategies you're using that you seem to think are working well?
We're doing a lot of hands-on, because I'm very hands-on and a kinesthetic learner, so I try to push that in my room. And a lot of my students love the sand boxes like we do in OG, and then the Alconen boxes have really helped my EL students break apart those sounds and see the pieces of their word instead of just a word in one piece.
Right.
And then we also do other spelling activities, and they might be classified as worksheets, but they're really interactive. Like my kids, you have to write with a white crayon, you color over it with a marker, it's a magic word, and it appears, and they love it.
Right.
And that makes them really focus on their spelling and their writing. That way they're focusing on their letters. And when they do it, I normally pull small groups with it, and I'll ask them to sound it out before they write it, because I don't want them just copying from the word bank.
Right.
So they'll sit there with their white crayon and say ch, I, n,
right.
chin, and then I let them color over it.
Right.
And that also keeps them from rushing through and just getting it done to be done.
Right. Yes. I loved the use of the sand trays that you used in your lesson. I thought that was awesome. How do you know what you're doing is working in your classroom?
My ELs, just in 2 weeks, have made a lot of growth. Let's see. This is my lowest EL friend. In our first grade review, he made a 67, which is passing, but I always push my ELs because I want them to have a C.
Right.
And then we come over about a week and a half later, and he's made a 91 and an 84 just within that week and a half.
Right.
Now, the first grade review test was pretty lengthy, so that could have factored in there, but he did great, and I did not give a single accommodation, because I like to see what ELs do first.
Right.
And I let them test whole group, and if I see they struggle, I'll pull them.
Right.
And I didn't have to pull him. I did have to pull one EL friend, and it was mainly because he was getting SH and CH mixed up.
Right.
And so we had to distinguish that. He could tell me what they said, but when he would go to write it, he would reverse them.
Right.
And I really haven't figured out why he reversed them, because he could sit there and tell me that chin was ch, and that was CH.
Right.
But if I just said the word chin, he would write SH.
I'm seeing a lot of that in my own classroom, SH and CH being confused with my EL population for sure. Okay, yeah, and so that's a drastic difference. They went from a 67 on their spelling test to a 91.
Yes.
So yeah, you definitely, whatever you're doing is definitely working. Okay, how many ELs do you have in your classroom?
I have 7.
Okay.
I technically have 8, but one's a non-floaty, so they have graduated out of EL, but 7 that I have to service for EL.
So what did the other EL students' grades look like?
From the first test, they went from a 60 to a 76. So that was a 16-point growth.
Still improvement, yes.
An 87 to a 100.
That's awesome.
Let's see, a 57, which I had to retest him so he could get up to 60. And he went up to a 77, and then an 80. So he's starting to go up a little bit. That was my friend that was really confusing CH and SH.
Okay.
So his grade is a little bit higher because I did have to pull him back and
test one-on-one.
Yes, because I didn't want him to fail.
Right.
I'm not here to let him fail.
Right.
I want to help him. But,
for sure.
Let's see. And then this one has really surprised me. He goes to EL intervention, and he had an 87, which isn't bad, but he was kind of struggling during instruction. But this test, he's made 100 on both of them so far.
Wow.
And I did not give him one single accommodation.
That is really good. So yeah, obviously the strategies that you're doing are definitely working. How are you bridging, which you've already answered a lot of this with what you were talking about with your data that you have, but how are you bridging the gap between your EL students and then your non-EL students?
I'm really just pulling in a lot of those manipulatives and a lot of those hands-on activities, because I mean, last year was my very first year, and I learned very quickly that my EL students have to learn hands-on.
Right.
I can't just sit there and preach it to them. I have to let them interact with it and be
Right.
physical with it.
Right.
And so that's helped a lot. And, you know, I just had a talk with them at the beginning. You can do hard things, and just because you go to EL, it doesn't mean you can't do this. And
Right.
like my friend that made a 100 both times, he was shocked when he made 100, but he was like, he told me that, especially the Alcona boxes, he said those helped him a lot.
Right. Breaking down those syllables for
Yes.
sure. Breaking down, yes, for sure. I loved in your lesson with your high frequency words, I loved the way that you had all the multisensory approaches. You did I think you did clap it, and then you did snap it, and then you stomped it, and then
Skywrite.
Skywrite. Yes, I love that. I think that's great for the ELs. I will say I did notice on a multisyllabic word that you just did it as one clap or one snap. I would suggest maybe, especially for the ELs and really the non-ELs, but to actually break it down into syllables on that. But I love the way you're using all those multisensory strategies.
And I did have one EL friend that caught me one day. You weren't in there for this lesson, but he caught me when we were doing that, and he was like, "But Miss Law, that's not a single syllable word. That's got 2 syllables." And him being an EL, I was like, "Oh, you caught me. Good
Right.
job."
Yeah.
So then we went back to it, but I've caught myself doing that too.
Right.
And I've just had to train myself, because a lot of the words are just single syllables.
Right.
And then they
Yeah.
throw in a random one, and I just don't even pay attention. So,
Right.
but I'm gonna have to do better about that, because my friend, my Mateo friend, caught me.
Right.
So.
That's good though. That's what we want them to do, you know, being able to recognize when we make mistakes, because we're only human for sure. And then at your tier 1 table, I watched you do your phonics lesson. And again, you were just basically doing a lot of the things that you were doing in your whole group. I would suggest that when they are encoding the word, that they pound and tap. That was one of our OG strategies. I think you went to OG last summer.
I did.
Okay. So yeah, that's something that really works well for my EL students, is the pounding and the tapping, which the Elcon boxes did that as well, but that's also something that I feel like has really helped them, because I'll see them during our assessments. I will see my kids pounding and tapping on their own without me even having to prompt them. So that's
Okay.
something you might want to work with non-EL students as well as EL students.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think your lesson went awesome. I love all those multisensory approaches. Next week, I believe we are still in Standard 10. No, actually, we're still doing Standard 10D, where we are going to add J as DGE, that trigraph. And then I think we're also doing TCH also from that standard for next week. So I may pop back in and observe another lesson, and then we can have another conversation and talk it out.
Okay.
All right. Thanks
Sounds
so
good.
much.